When it comes to horror and sci-fi, there's something mesmerizing and bewitching about the blend of imaginative world-building and the uncharted rules that define these eerie universes. Maybe it's the heart-pounding thrills or the gruesome spectacles of death. For many of us, like me, it's a mix of all of these elements. Now, if we're diving into the deep end of gore and futuristic nightmares, we've got to talk about the Alien franchise. It's an undisputed heavyweight in the world of horror and sci-fi. And let's not forget Sigourney Weaver, the ultimate final girl in cinematic history. But what truly sets Alien apart is its nightmarish creatures. The spine-tingling chills from the first Alien film, dating back to 1979, still make our skin crawl today. Even the less-loved Alien 3 and the so-so prequels directed by Ridley Scott have their share of stomach-turning and shocking moments. You see, the franchise is a treasure trove of unforgettable moments and savage kills. While not every installment may shine, they all bring something special to the table. And with the news of Alien Romulus set for the release next year, we're in for a wild ride. So I thought this was a good time to bring out this video and discuss the 24 most epic scenes in the franchise. If you're in it for some gruesome alien fun, you're in for a treat. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, let's begin. The first encounter of Xenomorphs. In the original Alien flick, there's a character that doesn't get nearly enough credit. Any guesses? Well, it has to be Jonesy, the space cat. In what can be considered to be one of the most important scenes of the entire franchise, Jonesy inadvertently becomes a key player. So, the crew is busy trying to pinpoint the sneaky Xenomorph with their trusty space radar. And guess who pops up on the screen? Yep, Jonesy. But the cat immediately runs away. Parker sends Brett after the little fur ball. Now, here's where things get really intense, and for all the right reasons. Brett goes after Jonesy and looks through the nooks and crannies of the vessel. He even stops for a little drink break before finally finding Jonesy. But before you know it, bam! The Xenomorph lurks behind Brett, stealthy as ever. When you see it earlier in the film, it is small and shy. But by now, Mr. Xeno is not some puny creature. This time, it's a big, mean, toothy nightmare. Brett turns around and faster than you can say, game over, he's skewered by those extra teeth that shoot out of the Xenomorph's mouth like a rocket. Now, the best part? Jonesy the cat is right there, front row seats to this gruesome show. We can only wonder what's going on in that little feline brain of his. Is he traumatized? Is he secretly enjoying the horror show? Your guess is as good as mine, but one thing's for sure. In that moment, Jonesy becomes an unwitting witness to a Xeno's first ever kill. Ambushed in the ducts. Dallas's fatal confrontation with the monster. Also in the OG Alien movie, there's a death scene that's not very hard to top, if you compare it with the death scenes in general. But when you stack it up against the later films, it does seem like a job well done. Captain Dallas, played by Tom Skerritt, meets his end in a real nail-biter. After the chestburster scene with Kane, the surviving crew tries to play hide-and-seek with the Xenomorph, but they are unable to find it, and to worsen the situation, Brett gets killed and his body goes missing. They figure out the biometallic monster is probably crawling around in the air ducts to stalk the crew members. So Dallas, the captain of the ship, being the brave soul he is, decides to go alien hunting in there. That might be a bit of an exaggeration. His plan was to flush out the alien. The crew guides Dallas using their retro-futuristic devices through the ducts, and they do, in fact, spot the Xenomorph tailing him. Panic mode kicks in, and they scream at Dallas to skedaddle. Dallas tries to use his flamethrower to look for the creature, but fails. When the stakes go high, he decides to run for his life. But guess what? Dallas takes a wrong turn and walks right into the Xenomorph. It's a short but intense scene. Dallas's body is not found by the crew right away, but in a scene that was left on the cutting room floor, we got to know that the alien was trying to do something called egg morphing. If you want to know what egg morphing is, why aliens do it, and how it helps them, you might want to check out our video about the same topic. I'll leave a link in the description below. Ripley's miraculous escape, defying the Xenomorph's savage assault. Alright, let's dive deep into the epic finale of the first Alien movie. So, Ripley's in a real bind. She's hit the self-destruct button on the Nostromo. Her entire crew is dead, and she's all alone, desperately trying to escape the Xenomorph. But she finds the creature blocking her path to the escape shuttle. This is the kind of stuff nightmares are made of. She tries to cancel the self-destruction, but no luck. So she bolts for the shuttle, and just in the nick of time, the Nostromo goes kaboom. Ripley thinks the worst is over, and the Xeno has gotten obliterated with the Nostromo. But she couldn't be more wrong. As Ripley's getting ready for a long space nap, she realizes the sneaky Xenomorph is on board, squeezing into a tight spot. Quick thinking, she suits up and uses some gas to smoke out the space bug. It tries to attack her, but Ripley's got one last ace up her sleeve. She cranks open an airlock, almost sending the alien into the great unknown. The thing's not done yet, though. It latches onto the frame like its life depends on it, which, in a way, it does. Ripley tries to shoot it with a grappling hook, and the airlock door closes, but it somehow manages to find its way to the engine exhaust, and Ripley is not having any more of it. She fires those engines and incinerates the creature. Ripley 1, Xenomorph 0. And that's how Ellen Ripley became an immortal character in the world of sci-fi movies. Marines can't survive Xenomorph's attack. Ellen Ripley's been in stasis for nearly 6 decades after that Xenomorph nightmare on Nostromo. She gets rescued by her not-so-trustworthy employers, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. They don't really buy her story about alien eggs on the exomoon LV-426, because now there's a whole colony called Hadley's Hope there. When the colony suddenly goes radio silent, they send in Ripley, along with the corporate weasel Burt and a bunch of colonial Marines led by the rather inexperienced Lieutenant Gorman. Ripley's only in if they can promise to nuke the site from orbit if they find the creatures. They hop on the spaceship Sulaco, meet Bishop the android, and head to LV-426. Down on the surface, they find Hadley's Hope looking like a ghost town. No bodies, just freaky barricades and strange signs. They rescue Newt, the lone survivor, and also discover some facehuggers locked up. As our brave gang heads under the massive atmosphere processing station, they're met with a grotesque sight. Colonists cocooned and serving as incubators for those pesky Xenomorph offspring. And then it happens. An infant alien bursts from a poor colonist's chest, causing chaos. The Marines are quick to burn the creature, but its screeches alert the other Xenomorphs. The grown-up Xenos come out to take their revenge, ambushing the Marines and taking out quite a few. That's when Lieutenant Gorman fails to deal with the situation. But Ripley steps up to the plate. She takes command, hops into an armored personnel carrier, and goes full-on wrecking ball to rescue Corporal Hicks and a couple of privates.
Just stay still.
Newt gets taken. During the course of the movie, Newt and Ripley find themselves trapped inside a medical lab with 2 facehuggers. Ripley once again goes into quick thinking mode and sets off the fire alarm, sending a signal to the Marines. The cavalry arrives and the Marines blast those facehuggers to kingdom come. To make things worse, the power goes out and the Xenomorphs charge in from all sides. In the wild firefight that follows, Burke bites the dust, Hudson's taken out of the game, and Hicks gets hurt. Gorman and Vasquez put it all on the line, sacrificing themselves to slow down the alien horde. But the poor girl, Newt, and Ripley, air de facto guardian on LV-426, get separated. Ripley and Hicks try to find Newt and succeed as well. However, to rescue Newt, Hicks has to cut through the grills. He gets into action, but Ripley notices that a Xenomorph has popped up on her motion sensor. She knows that it's closing in on Newt and asks Hicks to hurry. The poor fellow does his best, but it's a bit too late. The Xenomorph drone towers behind Newt. Now, this is a scene that was not all too gruesome, but it was every bit disturbing. Can you imagine the horror the child must have experienced while seeing the creature right in front of her? I mean, grown-up men and women find themselves running for their lives when encountering a Xeno. Newt was but a little kid. The Xenomorph Queen's lethal assault on Bishop. Ripley and Hicks made it to the second dropship, but Ripley's not leaving Newt behind. They all head to the processing station, where Ripley, decked out with some heavy firepower, decides to take a one-woman trip into the Xenohive to save Newt. Inside, they stumble upon the alien queen in her freaky egg chamber. Things get hair-raising scary when an egg starts cracking open. Actually, not really cracking open, but you know what I mean. Ripley goes all Rambo on those eggs and the queen's baby-making parts. That royal alien is not happy. With the queen hot on their heels, Ripley and Newt rejoin Bishop and Hicks on the dropship. They make a grand escape just moments before the station blows up into a gazillion pieces, as if a predator had activated his self-destruct device, taking the colony down in a nuclear explosion. However, back on Sulaco, things don't seem very good because the alien queen has come on board through the landing gear. While Bishop is still talking to Ripley, the queen uses her tail to pierce Bishop's guts from behind and lifts the poor fellow into the air. He is purging the white fluid that synthetics usually purge, but that's not all. The queen then goes on to rip Bishop into 2 parts. Quite gruesome stuff. I guess I love Bishop only because Lance Henriksen played the character. It's almost as if the role was written with him in mind and not the other way around. Ripley 1, Alien Queen 0. Ripley lures the queen's attention and gives Newt the green light to bolt. Newt dives under the floor without wasting any time. On the other hand, Ripley keeps taunting the queen and makes a run for it, slamming a door behind her. She had to do something immediately or else no one would survive. The queen is not amused and starts a floor-wrecking search to corner Newt, the root cause of all the queen's problems. The little one screams her lungs out, and just when things seem bleak, Ripley emerges in that massive forklift power loader. In what looked like a sci-fi gladiator match, Ripley and the queen go at it like nobody's business. Ripley throws punches, grabs the queen, and tries to toss her into the ship's airlock. But the queen's not giving up that easily, grabbing onto the power loader and dragging Ripley into the airlock with her. But our gal Ripley doesn't back down. She climbs up a ladder and opens the outer airlock door, sucking out the queen into the space vacuum. And just when things couldn't get any crazier, Newt's nearly swept up in the vacuum. But good old Bishop grabs her and hangs on for dear life. Ripley somehow hauls herself out of the airlock and slams it shut. Newt now calls her mommy, and Bishop, in his robot way, congratulates her with a "not bad for a human," hugs all around, and they've survived the ultimate alien throwdown. When the Xenomorph spares Ripley, but not the Lannister. Alright, let's talk about Ripley's awakening on Fury 161, the not-so-fun prison planet turned foundry. She meets Dr. Clemmons, played by Charles Dance, who's a ray of hope in this grim place, and also one of the very few good things about the movie. They even get cozy for a night, which is a rarity in the Alien franchise, and I think that's the only time Ripley got to rock the bed. And no, getting impregnated by a baby alien doesn't count as a romantic interlude. Anyway, Clemmons, the guy we've come to like and trust because of his life story and sacrifice, meets a shocking conclusion. He and Ripley are in the medical bay, just having a chat about life and stuff, and he's whipping up some meds for Ripley. It's all warm and rather fuzzy until, out of nowhere, a xenomorph appears and skewers Clemmons right through the head with its little mouth. Interestingly, this time around, the runner xenomorph, doing all the killing, decides to maintain good hygiene. So it's not your typical alien gore fest. The xenomorph ensures that Clemmons gets wrapped up in a plastic curtain, sparing Ripley from the sight of a bloodbath. Then this Xeno gets up close and personal with Ripley's face, giving us one of the most iconic shots in the whole movie, and possibly the entire franchise. And just when you think it's game over for Ripley, the Xeno drags Clemmons' body away. Rest in peace, Clemmons. Xenomorphs can't easily be fooled. Kevin is one of the early bird victims, stumbling upon the creature while it's tearing apart Vincent's unfortunate body. You can imagine the guy freaking out and shouting to get the alien's attention. He doesn't waste time and sprints through a series of hallways. Desperate to escape the relentless xenomorph, he makes it to the assigned door, barely sealing it in time as the creature tries to claw its way in. But as we all know, things usually go south in these situations. Chaos erupts and most of the prisoners meet their doom. You see, the design of the facility is much like a maze. People will either end where they started, some become lost, and worse yet, some bump into the xenomorph. In the midst of all this, Kevin is about to experience the last horrific adventure of his life. Actually, his last adventure ever. While he's cautiously moving through a corridor, the Xenomorph springs from above, ambushing him. It hoists him up and in a gruesome struggle, jams its inner jaw through his neck. Dylan rushes to the scene, trying to save him, but poor Kevin doesn't make it. Seconds later, the Xenomorph strolls into the prison chamber, reclaiming Kevin's lifeless body. So, yeah, another soul is lost to those hellbounds of some strange space god. Dylan's sacrifice didn't go to waste. In the anticlimactic showdown with the Xenomorph in the fiery furnace, Ripley and Dylan plan to crank up the blast furnace that's not been used in 5 years, lure the nasty critter into the molten lead, and turn it into a crisp. Ripley dives into the tunnel and taunts the Xenomorph to follow her. Very brave, Miss Ripley. With Dylan's help, they coax the alien right into the piston chamber. Morse slams the last door shut, sealing the deal. Now, Ripley's initial plan was to stay in the lead mold because she was already ready to meet her maker, but Dylan's having none of it. He reminds her about the promise that the alien dies before she does. As they both climb up, they realize the Xenomorph is right behind them. Dylan makes the ultimate sacrifice, tussling with the beast in the molten metal. Ripley gets out of there, but as Dylan's last cry rings out, Morse dumps hot lead as Ripley commands. The plan seems solid, but the alien bursts out of the mold, angrier than ever. It's now chasing Ripley, but Morse shouts to Ripley and points out the sprinkler system above her. Ripley pulls the trigger, drenching the alien in cold water. The rapid cooling causes it to crack and break until it finally explodes. Ripley's death. Now, we all know the film has its ups and downs, but this moment is one of the ups. After successfully getting rid of the last Xenomorph by dunking it into molten lead, things take a nasty turn. The not-so-nice scientists and military types, led by Bishop, show up with the plans to capture Riley and save the aliens for their not-so-noble experiments. But Ripley knows exactly what it could mean for humanity. She's not letting them use her for science experiments that could pose a threat to all humans. So, in an act of ultimate sacrifice, she takes matters into her own hands. Instead of being captured, she leaps off a platform and plunges into the searing molten metal below. As she falls backwards into a fiery abyss, the chestburster in her pops out. She clamps onto it, keeping it from escaping. It's a bold move, and it's safe to say both Ripley and the alien meet their fiery end. But as we all know, Ripley's not done yet. She gets cloned not once, but 8 times in Alien Resurrection. High-octane chase and call secret. Ripley and the gang make it through the tunnel, thinking they're in the clear. But surprise, they've walked right into an ambush. The shaft leading up from the mess hall is infested with alien eggs, and those creepy facehuggers pop out, going for the humans. Ripley gets one on her face, but she's got some superhuman strength in herself, which was curious at that point in time. She tears it off herself, which is a bit of a twist from her past facehugger encounter in the previous films. They use grenades to clear the shaft and climb up the ladder. But guess what? More aliens are waiting in the water below. It's an all-out attack. Call and Ren make it to the top of the shaft first, but then things get further complicated and twisted. Ren talks Call into handing over her gun and shoots her in the chest. Call's body falls into the water, drifting away, leaving Ripley quite horrified. Christy gets grabbed by an alien and, in a brave move, sacrifices himself to give Vress a shot at escaping. Ren seals everyone else inside and takes off. The doors open from the other side and Call's miraculously back in action. Ripley isn't fooled though. She saw Call get shot up close. Call is then forced to reveal her true identity. She's a second-generation android who gained consciousness, faked being human, and kept it all under wraps. Xenomorphs are more intelligent than one might expect. Dr. Gediman is one of the big brains behind the big resurrection of Ripley in the 1997 film project. After a solid decade of experimenting and tinkering with Ripley's DNA, Gediman and his fellow scientists finally crack the code. They managed to create a clone of Ellen Ripley, complete with a Xenomorph queen embryo cozying up inside of her. When the Ripley clone, dubbed Ripley 8, reaches maturity, Getamin himself plays a doctor and surgically plucks out the chestburster. Getamin is initially relieved when Dr. Wren decides not to off Ripley 8 once they've gotten what they wanted from her, and the queen embryo. Now things get really crazy in one of the containment cells where the Xenomorphs have been kept. Two Xenos notice that the freezing nitrogen spray has switched off, and they decide to make use of the situation. They team up to shred a third Xeno. The dying Xenomorph's tail smacks against the observation booth's window, alerting Getamin to the acidic blood eating through it. He thinks quickly and tries to use nitrogen spray to stop them, but the Xenomorphs have already made a hole in the floor. Getamin ventures in to check it out, but he gets yanked into a hole by a drone. His buddy Williamson watches in terror. So you see, the Xenos not only kill their comrade to use it as a tool for their prison break, but also hide and wait for Getamin to approach with his guard down. Later on, Getamin ends up cocooned in the hive. He probably has a chestburster inside him too. We witness the birth of the newborn, which has a taste for Xenomorph queens. Getamin is fascinated by this freaky creature, but he doesn't realize the danger until it's too late. The newborn goes for the kill, tearing out Getamin's brain with its teeth, putting an end to the Xenomorph science adventure, which somewhat feels like a Xenomorph version of poetic justice. Newborn. This human-alien hybrid is by far one of the creepiest guys we see in the franchise. It may not be the best version of a xenomorph, but as a monster, it's pretty gross and formidable. It's born during the movie and becomes the crew's worst nightmare, even sneaking onto the ship headed for Earth. Ripley knows that this thing can't make it to Earth, so she's on a mission to take it down for good. She rescues Call from the newborn's clutches, and then things get weird. Ripley and the newborn have a bizarre bonding moment where they touch foreheads in a way that's, well, a little too emotional for comfort. But Ripley's not getting sentimental. She knows she's got to finish the job. Ripley's weapon of choice? Her own acidic alien blood. She throws it at a spaceship window, creating a tiny hole. The newborn gets violently sucked against the breach, and it's trapped. That's when things get messy. The newborn starts falling apart, bits and pieces getting pulled out of the tiny hole in the window. The CGI might not be top-notch, but the practical effects inside the ship, like the newborn's guts getting yanked out and out of its body, are gloriously gruesome. Ripley sure knows how to deal with an alien, even if it's a horrifying human-alien hybrid. Connor's demise is really quick but brutal. Connors, one of the early explorers of the pyramid, takes charge of establishing the expedition's forward camp, ensuring the generators power the necessary lights to illuminate the massive space. As the team ventures deeper into the pyramid, Connors has the task of recording their findings with a video camera. Sadly, he gets so wrapped up in documenting their progress that he unintentionally triggers a hidden pressure switch on the entrance hallway floor. This triggers the revival of the captive Xenomorph queen, deep within the structure. When things take a dark turn, Connors and Stafford's crew arm themselves. In the midst of an attack by Scar, Connors finds himself caught off guard as the pyramid floor shifts, plunging him into a lower chamber. Despite his cries for help, the shifting stone sealed the hole he's fallen into. Isolated from the group, Connors finds himself surrounded by Xenomorphs, and that's the end for him. He ends up cocooned in the Xenomorph hive within the pyramid's sacrificial chamber. Predator's defeat in the unforgettable showdown. After the bloodbath at Razorback Point whaling station, where Scar, Celtic, and Chopper went on a killing spree against the Whalen Industries expedition members, they venture deep into the pyramid hidden beneath the ice for their rite of passage hunt. Their plasma casters are swiped by the human team, so the Predators split up to recover their prized weapons. Chopper and Celtic eventually catch up to a group of survivors, and it looks like Lex is about to meet a grim end at Chopper's hands. But surprise, Grid makes an entrance, impaling Chopper with its tail and lifting him into the air before giving him the ultimate headbite. Celtic squares off with Quinn in close combat, and it's pretty one-sided. Celtic quietly knocks Quinn down an access tunnel, leading to the deep pyramid, where Scar later finishes him off. Celtic manages to catch up with some survivors, trapping Stafford with his net gun and skewering him with his combi stick. Sebastian de Rosa tries to take on Celtic, but he gets choked out for his efforts. Enraged by the loss of his fellow predator, Celtic chucks Sebastian aside and squares off against Grid. Their duel is an intense battle, with Celtic initially holding the upper hand. He even manages to slice off Grid's tail blade and trap him in his net gun, leaving some nasty scars. But just when Celtic is about to deliver the finishing blow with his ceremonial dagger, Grid breaks free and tackles Celtic to the ground. Things are getting seriously heated down in that pyramid. Xenomorph Queen's royal clash with the Predator. Lex has a close encounter with Scar, the Predator, who is ready to strike, but she manages to stop him and even returns his weapon. Things get even crazier when another alien shows up, knocking down Scar and lunging at Lex. Quick thinking on her part, she uses the Predator's spear weapon to impale and kill the alien. Scar then steps in, using his energy weapon to mow down a swarm of incoming aliens. They beat a hasty retreat when the Alien Queen calls them off. So Lex and Scar decide to team up, with Scar fashioning a spear from an alien's tail and a shield from its skull. These handy tools are acid-proof, which is pretty darn useful. As for the Queen, she is busy summoning more aliens, but Lex and Scar enter a chamber full of resin, dead mercenaries, and alien eggs. The Queen, on the other hand, manages to break free from her chains, spills her acidic blood all over them, and starts heading for the surface. Scar senses her approach and sees that all the eggs in the room are about to hatch. That's when he decides it's kaboom time. He activates his self-destruct device and he and Lex dash out of the pyramid. The aliens aren't too pleased about this and go after them, even wounding Scar's arm in the process. But Lex activates a lift to the surface, and they ride it up before the bomb goes off, obliterating the pyramid and the aliens. Lex and Scar barely escape the collapsing whaling station caused by the blast. As a sign of trust, Scar removes his helmet and marks Lex with a clan symbol on her cheek. But guess who isn't done yet? Yep, the Alien Queen emerges from the ice, itching for a fight. Scar fires needles and uses a throwing disc to give the Queen a real headache, but she knocks him down with her tail. Lex steps in though and stabs the Queen with her spear, sending her into a burning shack. The Queen is ticked off, and she chases Lex through the whaling station's whalebone graveyard right to the edge of a cliff, trapping her under a water tower. Scar returns, frees Lex, and tries to tie the Queen to the water tower. The plan hits a snag though, and the Queen stabs Scar with her tail. Before she can finish him, Lex comes to the rescue. She releases the water tower, sending the Queen and the tower to the ocean floor. Unfortunately, Scar succumbs to his injuries, but Lex manages to survive this wild ordeal. The epic showdown. Red Alien takes on the Predator. The hospital turns into an alien battleground. And just when things seem bleakest, the Predator named Wolf shows up to clean the house. As the humans dash upstairs, they stumble right into the middle of a fierce Predator vs. Alien showdown. Unfortunately, Jesse meets a gruesome end when Wolf's shuriken finds its mark. Ricky, fueled by anger, takes on a wolf with a machine gun, but the aliens intervene and knock Wolf into an elevator shaft. Ricky gets hurt but lives to tell the tale. Wolf leaves a partying gift, a plasma pistol that Dallas snags. Their escape plan leads them to the rooftop, but a bunch of aliens decide to play gatekeepers. Dallas, wielding the plasma pistol, holds the fort as Kelly fires up the helicopter. Just as the aliens close in on Dallas, Wolf swoops in and wipes out the remaining aliens. Dallas hops into the helicopter and they make a quick getaway, leaving Wolf and the Predalien duking it out to the bitter end. Morales spots a fighter jet dropping a bomb. He finally realizes that Kelly has been spot on all along. The town, along with the remaining aliens, gets reduced to ash, including the locked-in death grip tango between Wolf and the Predalien. Attack of the Baby Neomorph. In the movie Alien Covenant, two poor souls from the Covenant security team, Ledward and Hallett, have some seriously bad luck. They fall victim to the spores. You know, the ones messed up by the black goo. Now, Ledward is on duty to protect the lead biologist, Corinne Oram. while she's doing her science thing on Planet 4. But instead of sticking with Kareen, he decides to sneak off for a smoke break. While he's off in his own world, he accidentally stomps on some egg sacs, releasing a bunch of spores that go right into his ear. He doesn't think much of the itch and carries on, but soon enough, Ledward's health takes a nosedive, so Kareen rushes him back to the Lander 1 for help. Moral of the story? Smoking kills. Maggie Ferris discovers something weird under Ledward's skin in the ship's sickbay, and she pretty much freaks out. So she bails, leaving Kareen behind with poor Ledward, who's getting worse by the minute. Eventually things get really gruesome. A barbed creature bursts out of Ledward's back. That is the first Neomorph bloodburster in the movie. It goes for Kareen, messes her up, and then turns its attention to Ferris. She tries to fight it off, but in the struggle, she accidentally blows up the ship's munitions locker. Kaboom! The explosion wipes out Lander 1, taking Ferris with it and leaving the rest of the crew stranded on Planet 4. Ledward's body goes up in smoke, and the Neomorph that emerged from him runs off into the wild. Double trouble. Now, Hallett gets his share of trouble too. The crew stumbles upon a crashed alien ship, and Hallett finds a weird puffball-like plant inside. Thinking he'll be the hero, he pokes at the fungus, but that just unleashes the spores, and he ends up inhaling them. Those microscopic troublemakers get into his nostrils, and he feels a bit off, but nothing too alarming initially. But soon enough, Hallett gets really sick. An urgent message from Ferris has the crew rushing back to the Lander 1, but Hallett doesn't make it. He convulses, and the creature inside him decides to make a dramatic exit by forcing its way out through his throat. Not pretty. After all that, two Neomorphs come back for a rematch and attack the crew. One of them goes for Daniels, but Walter, the synthetic, steps in. He gets his synthetic hand bitten off, but manages to get the creature a good tail smack before it gets to the rest of the crew. Despite the security officer's best efforts to shoot it, the creature gets even more furious and ends up killing Anchor. Then it goes for Daniels, but Rosie shoots it dead, saving the day. But wait, there's more. A second Neomorph shows up and attacks Rosie, almost killing her. But David fires a flare gun and scares it away just in time, sparing Rosie's life. Neomorphs eat humans. So later on, the crew decides to head with David to the Engineer Temple for safety. While they're busy trying to figure a way off Planet 4, Rosie goes for a bath. That's when the second Neomorph sneaks into David's temple and, in a gruesome fashion, ends Rosie's life by tearing her head off with its jaws. David finds the Neomorph chowing down on Rosie's remains and tries to be its buddy. But Captain Chris shows up and, against David's advice, shoots the creature in a fit of anger. Bad move. David has some sinister plans and tricks Chris into becoming a host for a Xenomorph chestburster. That doesn't end well for Chris or anyone else for that matter. A brutal death of Cole. That night, things go from bad to worse as Rosenthal disappears into thin air. Chris, being the dutiful leader, goes on a rescue mission to find her, but he doesn't come back either as he's busy getting face-hugged. So Cole and Lopez decide it's high time for a search party. They find themselves in a nearby chamber where Cole has the unfortunate luck of stumbling upon Rosenthal's mangled body, courtesy of one of those hideous creatures. With the first day of light approaching, Lopez and Cole decide to be smart and gather up supplies for their escape plan. The duo then ventures into the temple to find Chris. Cole eventually discovers the captain's lifeless body, looking like it had been through a blender, thanks to the birth of an alien life form right out of its chest. And then, things go downhill. Cole has a face-off with one of the parasites that has taken Chris for a host. It latches onto his gun and it tries to blast it, but the critter is fast, dodging his bullets and heading straight for Lopez. It goes for Lopez's face, and Lopez tries to peel the parasite off, and Cole, in a moment of heroism, uses his trusty knife to cut the thing loose and tosses it away, saving Lopez's skin. But it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. The acid that sprayed from the parasite still managed to burn Lopez's face pretty bad. As Cole tries to help Lopez with the first aid, their attention gets pulled upward. They spot something on the ceiling, and the alien that had come out of Chris kills Cole before tearing apart his corpse. Last kill. Back on the Covenant, the survivors are prepping to hit the hay and go back into hypersleep, but they discover that a second protomorph has burst out of poor Lopez's chest. And, well, he didn't make it. This creature is now on the loose in the ship. Once it grows up a bit, the Protomorph decides to have a field day in the shower room, and it doesn't end well for Rix and Upworth. Daniels and Tennessee, with a little help from Walter, manage to lure it into the terraforming equipment bay. Daniels traps the critter in a vehicle and orders Walter to open the doors. He does, and the decompression sucks everything, including the Protomorph, into the cold, dark void of space. But it puts up one last fight before getting impaled and sent flying off into the cosmos. Like David, like Walter. With that mess behind them, it's time for Daniels and Tennessee to head back to hypersleep. But Daniels realizes something is off about Walter. Turns out it isn't Walter at all, but David, who has pulled a sneaky switcheroo by chopping off his hand and messing up his face to look like Walter. Daniels cries out in vain as David sends her into hypersleep. Now, all alone on the ship, David strolls into the hypersleep bay with the colonists in their sleep pods. He takes a look at all the bodies in stasis and regurgitates 2 little facehugger embryos before stashing them away in cold storage right next to the human embryos. In a final twist, David records a log as Walter, saying that everyone except Tennessee and Daniels have been wiped out in the neutrino blast. He claims the ship is still on course, but you and I both know that things are far from hunky-dory with David calling the shots. But hopefully Mr. Ridley Scott will make more sense while making the next film. Marvelous verdict. So you see, the Alien franchise is filled with amazing scenes and brutal kills. Although the movie, apart from the first 2, might not be good as a whole, all of them serve well in parts. And I think I can live with that. With the news that Alien Romulus is scheduled for a release next year, I think it could be fun to see what the new franchise has to offer. With CGI doing wonders these days, one can expect the film to bring back the franchise's lost glory. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.